Note, the following program is a Springer Podcast Network production.
Welcome back to Pro Wrestling Focus. I'm Cody Springer, and we've got a loaded show this week. Nick Aldis is officially stepping back into the ring at SummerSlam against Gunther. CM Punk and Cody Rhodes have gone from allies to bitter enemies. And is Tom Brady really coming to WWE? And then we got to talk about Bayley's WWE future that is in question, plus my thoughts and predictions on everything on this episode of Pro Wrestling Focus. All right, let's talk about Gunther and Nick Aldis being made official for SummerSlam. But let's talk about the history here and what led to this point, because Gunther, he's been obsessed with becoming the WWE champion, and we had the triple threat match in Night of Champions. It was him, Cody Rhodes, and Sami Zayn. And, Sami Zayn had his big moment. He won the title. And then Gunther just snapped after Night of Champions. Him and Nick Aldis got into an altercation after the show. And then Nick Aldis was put on administrative leave by WWE, which, let's call it what it is. He was suspended. And then Gunther would put Nick Aldis in the sleeper hold, taking things to a physical level, and Nick had enough. At Saturday night's main event this past weekend, he interfered in the tag match. It was Gunther and Sami versus CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. And if Sami and Gunther would won this match, then they would be added to the WWE Championship match for SummerSlam, making it a fatal four-way. However, Nick Aldis got involved. He cost Gunther the match, and then it led to another physical altercation at the SummerSlam kickoff show that aired on YouTube on this past Sunday. And Triple H said enough's enough. He's making the match official. The reigning general, Gunther versus Nick Aldis. And this has been one of WWE's best non-title feuds. It's the case of a man pushing a person that's in authority way too far. It's gone to a personal level between these two, and now it's gotten to this point where we're going to finally see these two in a match. And, this is Nick Aldis' first match in not only WWE, but his first match in quite a while. Because it's been a long time since Nick Aldis has laced up the boots. He's been in this general manager role for WWE on SmackDown, and he's also been a producer backstage. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this match goes. As far as what my expectations are, I'm hoping that they give Gunther and Nick time to really build a really good match. This could be a very technical sound match between these two. We know what Gunther's capable of. We've seen what he can do, and Gunther has actually done well against non-wrestling figures like Pat McAfee. And now Nick, who actually has experience, is now facing Gunther. And, Nick, he's quite an accomplished wrestler in his own right. But it has been a while since he's been in the ring. So how will things go? I'm thinking it's going to be a really good match between these two. I think it's going to be very technical. And I think these two are going to put on a hell of a match, to be honest with you. But yes, I'm very much looking forward to this. Nick's had a couple close calls. We thought, WrestleMania, um, a year ago, not this past Mania, but the year before, when Randy Orton needed an opponent because Kevin Owens was out with an injury. We thought maybe Nick was going to get the spot and face Randy, but then it ended up going to Joe Hendry. So now, we've seen Nick being kind of pushed around at this point while he's been the GM, and he's had enough of Gunther's shit, and it's gone way too far. And now these two are going to go one-on-one at SummerSlam. Now, I feel it's worth discussing Nick's journey to this point, to getting to WWE and then having this upcoming match with Gunther at SummerSlam, because Nick has had quite the journey to get to this point, because he was a established talent in TNA. He was under the name of Brutus Magnus. And I thought he had a lot of potential, to be a top name in TNA and then possibly in the future cross over to WWE, like a lot of the guys who eventually did, like Bobby Roode, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, but didn't quite happen. Nick, he left TNA and he started rebuilding himself through NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and he essentially resurrected a dead championship. It was considered to be a dead title at that time, and yeah, he won the NWA World Heavyweight title. He defended that all over the world. He was champion twice, I believe, and I think he was champion for over 1,000 days, both reigns. And, he helped create the 10 pounds of gold era for that title. And then if you guys remember All In several years ago, back in 2018, it was him and Cody for the NWA World Heavyweight title. And yeah, I mean, Nick made an impact when he left TNA. He decided, you know what, I'm not going to do what everybody else does. I'm not going to try to push to go to WWE. I'm going to hit the independents. I'm going to go to NWA. I'm going to win this title, and I'm going to bring prestige back to the NWA World Heavyweight title. And that is exactly what he did. And then he would return to TNA under his real name, Nick Aldis. And, he wasn't there too long. He was more so just coming in, make appearances, and then he landed in WWE. Triple H brought him into WWE as a backstage producer, and then that producer role grew into being the on-screen general manager for SmackDown. And, Nick's journey to get to this point has been a pretty interesting one. And I feel like he has earned this match. This is an immensely talented performer, and I think he's going to show exactly what he's capable of when he faces off against Gunther at SummerSlam. But speaking of SummerSlam, we got to talk about CM Punk and Cody Rhodes and what happened this past weekend at Saturday night's main event and the SummerSlam kickoff show. Because as I mentioned earlier, CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, they were tag team partners going up against Gunther and Sami Zayn to determine whether or not Sami and Gunther would be added to their title match at SummerSlam. And, like I said, because of help from Nick, Cody and Punk defeated Gunther and Sami. And after the match was over, CM Punk was about to leave the ring, and he had his back turned to Cody, and then he flipped the championship onto his shoulder, and the strap of the title hit Cody in the face. And there was a backstage confrontation that was posted on WWE's social media where CM Punk was being interviewed by Kathy Kelly, and Cody interrupted, and they started getting into this argument about what happened out there. And Cody felt disrespected. Even Trick Williams randomly was trying to separate Cody from Punk, and then Bobby Roode also got in there too to try to, put some water on the fire there. But yeah, so those two had a confrontation, and Cody and Punk, there was some explicit language thrown in there too. And then we go to Sunday, which is a SummerSlam kickoff show. And Cody was out first. Him and Michael Cole had some banter. And then CM Punk comes out. They discuss it. They said they both felt embarrassed by the backstage confrontation. Punk was saying, like, oh, brothers fight, and, I'm just ready to move on from it. It was embarrassing. We had some words, but it's over and done with. And then Cody got a little pissed off. He looked at CM Punk and said, "You are not my brother. And I'm not going to apologize for what I said." And then, Punk's like, "Okay, so you're still mad." And he looked at the fans and he said, what it is that he's paranoid. He's paranoid because John Cena stabbed him in the back, that Randy Orton stabbed him in the back. And then he told Cody, like, look, I'm not going to stab you in the back. I'm not going to do that. And, and he said, what happened was an accident, but this is on purpose. And then he shoved Cody, and it got into this brawl, and then cops had to be on stage. I thought that was excessive. I'm like, huh? So when Nick Aldis and Gunther went at it, Triple H just let it fly. But because it's Cody and Punk, you need cops out there on the stage. And I just felt that was a little overboard. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But, it's WWE. I think Triple H has kind of taken some things from Vince and applied it, with how he books WWE. But, the main discussion point is whether or not the belt shot was really accidental. Did CM Punk mean to do that on purpose? Was he being a dick? And then who's more justified here? Is it Cody or is it Punk? Because to be honest, I kind of feel like Cody, he's being too, like, irrational, too pissed off, too emotional. And that's just not Cody, Like, Cody kind of is like, okay, that happened, but I'm willing to look past it. Even when The Rock was doing some horrible shit to him, Cody was still kind of in that space where, I kind of want to turn the other cheek, but I kind of also want to retaliate. But just the way they're going about this here, Cody's acting more rational. He's acting more emotional. Are we setting up a potential heel turn here? Is Cody going to turn heel here at SummerSlam? We've been talking about this for a while now. They teased it at Elimination Chamber a year ago with The Rock, coming in, and the whole Sell Your Soul storyline. They teased it then. So are we heading towards a heel turn for Cody Rhodes? Or are we heading towards a heel turn for CM Punk? Now, I don't think that Cody necessarily needs to turn heel. I don't think that. I don't think that needs to happen. But I do think the way they're booking this, it kind of is setting up for a potential Cody Rhodes heel turn. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right direction to go into. Now, I do think Cody should turn heel at some point, but I don't know if CM Punk is the right person to get him to turn heel. You know what I mean? Because I kind of feel like it should be somebody that is going to push Cody to his absolute limit. And I don't know, maybe it's just a buildup of all the shit that Cody's had to deal with over the last couple of years with Roman Reigns, John Cena, and The Rock. That whole mess. Him and Seth, him and Randy Orton. I don't know. Maybe it's just an accumulation of stuff that's gotten under his skin, and now he's just ready to explode. Maybe that's the story they tell. I don't know. But this could possibly be the hottest feud going into this year for the WWE Championship. And I know a lot of people were pissed off about Sami Zayn dropping the belt to CM Punk, but like I said 2 weeks ago, it's about box office. It's about drawing. And the biggest match they could do this summer is CM Punk versus Cody Rhodes. They've been teasing it for a while now. And yeah, it is going to be interesting to see what happens here. Could we see a heel turn? Could we see a big shift in the storyline? I don't know. We're just going to have to watch SummerSlam to find out here in a couple weeks. But, one thing's for sure, there's definitely something different going on with Cody Rhodes. All right, let's discuss Tom Brady and Logan Paul here. So, we could potentially be seeing Tom Brady in a WWE ring in the future. We could be seeing it because they're clearly building up something here between Tom Brady and Logan Paul. And this has been going on for pretty much since the start of the year because Tom Brady, he appeared on Logan Paul's podcast, Impulsive. And that's when this whole thing got started. Tom Brady made the comment that, what you do, inside the WWE ring, that's cute and all. But what I did, that was the real shit. Me playing quarterback in the NFL, that was the real shit right there. So then that's how, this feud kicked off. Tom Brady was talking shit to Logan Paul, and basically talking shit about pro wrestling. And then I think Tom Brady would go on to say, like, oh, I love WWE, but, they're fake. Wrestling's fake and all that. Which, obviously, drew a reaction, not only from fans, but from, some talent in WWE. And then this would lead to a flag football game that got played. It was Tom Brady's team versus Logan Paul's team. And then Logan's team actually beat Tom's team. And, they kind of had some respect towards each other. I think they shook hands and stuff like that. So, we thought, okay, they were just, doing this for shits and gigs, there's no real heat. Well, now things have kicked back up over the weekend because at Fanatics Fest, Tom Brady and Logan Paul had a confrontation, and Tom Brady slapped Logan Paul in the face. So, that kicked things back up again. And then at the World Cup, they were they were in neighboring suites, and they saw each other, and then they flipped each other off like, "Oh, fuck you," you know, fuck you, Tom, fuck you, Logan. Yeah. So they're clearly building towards something. I don't think there's any actual heat between these two. I just think that they're doing this because they're trying to set up a potential match between these two in a WWE ring. And there's been reports, not only from the dirt sheets, but also from, sports outlets, that Tom Brady is actually negotiating with WWE on a potential match. But, we got to talk about it. Is this just a publicity stunt? Is this just to draw attention to both of them? Is this just, a way for Tom Brady to continue to get his name out there? Because, Tom Brady's been retired from the NFL for a couple years now. And he's a part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders in the NFL. But who else is a part owner of the Raiders? Ari Emanuel, TKO, the boss, the guy who owns the WWE and the UFC, TKO, he is part owner as well of the Raiders. So, this is who the mastermind is behind this whole thing, is Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel loves celebrity involvement in WWE. We've seen it. Travis Scott, being involved in the Rock, John Cena, Cody Rhodes thing at Elimination Chamber. He was a part of John Cena's historic heel turn. And then we've seen Jelly Roll be involved and actually been in matches in WWE. We've seen I Show Speed in the Royal Rumble, and then he had a match at WrestleMania this year. We've seen, we've seen Ari Emanuel's influence with the Pat McAfee involvement with the Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton storyline. So yes, Ari Emanuel, his fingerprints are all over this thing for sure. But do fans actually want to see this? And I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are clamoring for Logan Paul versus Tom Brady. And could Logan actually carry Tom to a good match? Because Logan, he hasn't had many years in the business. And Logan, he's actually pretty good. He is. For a guy who did not wrestle in the independents, did not have a background in this, going from a YouTuber, a content creator, to being a professional wrestler, Logan's actually pretty good. You got to give him his props. Love him or hate him, he is good in that ring. When it comes to that squared circle, Logan Paul has the talent. But could he carry someone like Tom Brady to a good match? I don't know. Because, Logan's had some years in the business at this point, but is he experienced enough to call spots? Is he, experienced enough to call a match on his own? I don't know. And is this going to be smart business? The crossover appeal, yeah. Definitely going to have people from the NFL world talking. You're going to have people in the wrestling world talking, and then just sports entertainment media in general. Yeah, people are going to be all over this talking about it. ESPN, NFL, the NFL people, NFL Network might even talk about this. So yeah, they're doing this for the crossover appeal and just getting viral engagement. Because here's the thing. A lot of people want to complain about what WWE and TKO do, but you have to understand the business model. They're looking to make money. That is the number one overall thing that they're more concerned about, is making money. They're not on X, they're not on social media rating your fantasy booking suggestions. No, that's not what they're doing. They're thinking about what would be most box office. And like I said, Ari Emanuel, he loves celebrity involvement. Him and Mark Shapiro, they love that shit. Now, do we like it? No, not necessarily. But this is where we're at right now with professional wrestling in 2026. And yeah, I'm thinking that this match will probably happen. It'll probably happen at WrestleMania. So I would expect Tom Brady and Logan Paul to have more run-ins from now until Mania. Before we get back in the podcast, I want to tell you about the newest episode of the Cody Springer Show, which is the other podcast that is a part of the Springer Podcast Network. This week's episode was episode 145, Why Customer Service is Dying, where I dive into the frustrating reality of what has happened to customer service over the years. We discussed why great customer service is becoming harder to find and how automation and AI are changing the customer experience, why employees are burning out, the growing lack of respect between customers and workers, and personal stories from my years in customer service. So whether you've worked in retail, restaurants, or you've been frustrated as a customer yourself, this episode is one that you won't want to miss. It is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, now let's talk about Bayley's uncertain future in WWE. There's been a lot of talk right now about her future within the company. She had her match against Lyra Valkyria this past weekend at Saturday Night's Main Event. She lost the match. Lyra Valkyria submitted Bayley with her new submission finishing hold, which looks pretty brutal. I think it was a move that somebody else has done. I think Brian Kendrick did it at one point. He called it the captain's hook. But regardless, it is a pretty legit submission hold. It really looks like you could choke somebody out with it. And then after the match was over, Lyra did not stop. Like I said, she's kind of has this unhinged character now. Last week I said that she looks like a crackhead. But yeah, she attacked Bayley, put her back in that submission hold, and then slammed her on the steel steps. And the rumor is that was supposed to write her off of television because that supposedly could have been her last match with WWE. Now, Bayley's contract is expiring soon, at the end of the year, from what we've been told by the dirt sheets. And, there's been speculation that she could end up becoming a member of the All Elite Wrestling roster. And Mercedes Moné, aka Sasha Banks, has been fueling the rumors too, as she posted on her story the other night that she would like to have a match between her and Bayley at Forbidden Door. So the discussion here is Bayley actually leaving WWE? I think it's a possibility. We've seen a lot of talent leave WWE over the past several months who have been there for a long time. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, they were a part of WWE for a long time as a part of the New Day, and then they left. And Sheamus recently has decided that he is not going to be a member of the WWE roster here very soon, as he's going to be leaving the company once his deal is expiring. And now we got Bayley here, who could possibly become a free agent. And, could WWE afford to lose Bayley? To to me, I feel like Bayley is one of those talents where she's just an asset, to the the roster. She's a great worker. She's got charisma. She can put on great matches. And yeah, she's bounced around several characters. She was the hugger when she first started in WWE when she was in NXT, and then she became the role model. But here lately she's just been Bayley. You know, but I'm getting really sick and tired of this um this perception that Triple H is disrespecting Bayley, because that is complete nonsense. Because I've seen people say that, oh, Triple H has done nothing but disrespect Bayley and devalue her. I don't think that at all. I mean, yeah, Bayley, she hasn't been in the women's championship picture for a while, but look at what Triple H has done with her. She won the Royal Rumble, and then she was in a high profile WrestleMania women's title match with Io Sky about 2 years ago. How is that disrespecting and devaluing Bayley? But I don't think Triple H has disrespected or devalued Bayley in any type of way. And would her going to AEW be the right move for her? Maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah, she has been one of the most consistent performers that this company has had over the past decade. She is part of the four horsewomen of WWE, along with Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks, or Mercedes Moné, whatever you want to refer to her as. But, she could, decide to go over to All Elite and wrestle with her best friend, Mercedes. Or she could re-up with WWE for another couple years. And then when she had that interview with Chris Van Vliet, I don't know how far back ago that was, but she said there's other things outside of wrestling that she wants to do. So maybe once her contract's done with WWE, if they can't reach an agreement, or maybe she's gonna make that move. She's like, oh, I'm gonna focus on things outside of wrestling. I'm gonna take some time away from the business and focus on these things, and then when I'm ready, I'll come back. And it is all right for talent to step away from the business. It is. Sometimes talent just need to step away from the business for a while, and then when they come back, they're bigger than ever because the fans miss them. And then when they do return, the fans are excited, like, oh, holy shit, so and so is back, and they become a bigger star than they were before. But yeah, like I said, I mean, as far as fans complaining about Bayley not being in the title picture, do you not realize how stacked and how deep WWE's women's division is? Just look at it. You have Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, AJ Lee coming in from time to time. And then you have Liv Morgan. You have Roxanne Perez, Raquel Rodriguez. You have Fatal Influence, who's still kind of new to the main roster. You have Paige, who returned at WrestleMania. The Bella Twins, Nikki and Brie. You have Lyra Valkyria. You have all these women, all these talented women. Not everybody can be in the damn title picture at once. It's just unrealistic to expect that from creative, from Triple H. You need to get over yourselves. Not everybody can be in the title picture at one time. Man, I just don't understand what people expect from Triple H and from creative. at times. I just don't get it. Their expectations are so unrealistic. You try booking the damn shows for a couple weeks and you see how hard it would be. Oh, if I was in Triple H's shoes, I'd be racking my brain about how I can get all these women on the show. I'd be racking my brain trying to come up with ways to make that happen. But yes, Bayley, she is definitely an elite talent. She's a star. And I hope whatever she does next, whether that's going to AEW, re-signing with WWE, or just doing her own thing, I hope that she has her happiness and her health at the forefront, because that comes before anything else. So I'm hoping that whatever decision she makes is that it brings her happiness and joy. And that's all I can hope for. I'm a Bayley fan, and I'm hoping whatever she does next, that brings nothing but good things for her. The wait is almost over, because tomorrow night on the Springer Podcast Network, we will have the debut episode of Creepy AF. Our debut episode, appropriately titled Catfished, tells 3 chilling fictional stories that prove that the scariest monsters don't hide in haunted houses. They hide behind phone screens, fake profiles, and everyday faces. No ghosts, no demons, just realistic horror that could happen to anyone. If you enjoy suspense, psychological horror, and stories that are grounded in reality, then Creepy AF is for you. It premieres tomorrow at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Creepy AF, a horror fiction podcast. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Pro Wrestling Focus. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like the video, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Rumble, and of course on YouTube. Leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think Nick Aldis can actually beat Gunther? And who is walking out of SummerSlam as the WWE Champion? Will it be CM Punk or Cody Rhodes? Should Tom Brady wrestle in WWE? And where do you think that Bayley will end up? I'm Cody Springer, and I'll catch you next time right here on Pro Wrestling Focus. Watch wrestling and stay focused.